So Sam, let's start with the main character here. Who is Hunter Biden?
It's funny you use the word characters. I often think of US politics as like this drama that just keeps going on. And this is definitely another chapter in the soapy that is the US politics. Hunter Biden is the new character you need to know. He is the lawyer and businessman son of the US president. Joe Biden's other son, Beau, who is Hunter's older brother, died of brain cancer in 2015. And now Hunter has been very open about his history of drug addiction, alcohol abuse, and his mental ill health, all of which was detailed in his memoir he released in 2021. That one was called Beautiful Things. Now, you might have heard Hunter Biden's name come up in a couple of different contexts along the way of Joe Biden's presidency and pre-campaign. One time was when Hunter's position on a board of a Ukrainian energy company came under scrutiny because of the potential that presented of conflicts of interest that might have brought his father into play. There's never been a finding of criminal wrongdoing in that situation.
He's definitely been a controversial figure throughout Biden's presidency. So he is now in court. Why now?
Well, Hunter Biden has been accused of lying on a background check to purchase a gun in Delaware, and that's an offence in that US state. So here's a bit of context for you. To buy a firearm in the state of Delaware, gun owners have to complete a background check before being approved, and in most cases that's a form on a clipboard inside the gun shop. And it's alleged in this case that Hunter denied a history of drug abuse in order to pass the screening process back in 2018. Now, Hunter claims he never used the gun that he bought on that day, and he actually threw it away in a public bin 11 days after he purchased it.
It's alleged that this happened in 2018, though, so why is it in court now?
Well, it's taken us a long time to get to this point. I mean, the US Department of Justice began their investigation into Hunter Biden in 2018. But as they began their investigation, they actually uncovered a bit more than just that alleged unlawful gun purchase. They uncovered a US $1.4 million, so that's just over 2 million Australian dollars, in unpaid taxes. And Hunter Biden has now paid back those taxes that he owed. Now, this was a really major tax investigation, and it was happening almost simultaneously as the 2020 presidential election, although it wasn't revealed even to Hunter himself until December of 2020.
Wait, sorry, can you just explain that? So during the election was in November 2020. Are you saying Hunter Biden didn't even know that his taxes were being investigated at that time?
Exactly, and it was kind of happening simultaneously, and there's been a lot written about who knew inside both the campaigns, but there was this sense that there was a serious criminal investigation bubbling under the surface.
Right.
And then that investigation became public, and in order for the investigation to cause as little fuss as possible to both Hunter Biden but also the wider Biden campaign, Hunter Biden's team offered a plea deal. And in that plea deal, Hunter Biden would plead guilty to the tax violations if the Justice Department agreed not to prosecute him for other crimes. And that included some evidence that was uncovered about him potentially lying about his drug use on the form to buy the gun. And for a while, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and Hunter Biden did have a deal, but that deal broke down, and he was then officially charged with lying on a background check and the illegal possession of a firearm in September of last year. Now, the court documents say that he, quote, knowingly made a false and fictitious written statement, and he intended to deceive a firearms dealer. And this is a really serious charge. I know the instinct is kind of, well, you lied on a form. I mean, that can't really attract more than a fine. But in fact, if he's found guilty, he faces a maximum sentence of 25 years in jail.
Wow. And so just to be clear, is Hunter Biden denying that he lied?
Well, we're going to find out more about what the defense is putting forward as this trial plays out. But in terms of what we know right now, the plea deal that fell through didn't actually require him to make any admission of guilt on these charges. Instead, these gun charges would be waived, and he would plead guilty to the tax evasion charges. And that would mean that he would avoid jail as long as he didn't get into any more trouble with the law for a 2-year period. But like I said, that failed. And so now Hunter Biden's defense will essentially argue that he was in denial about his drug use at the time that he filled in his form. So kind of a bit more of a mental health style argument. And he might not have filled out the whole form himself. And it's also been suggested that the defense could argue that he's only being brought to trial because he's the president's son, and there is an underlying political motivation to the trial. And I think the key bit here is that this trial is as much going to be about Hunter Biden's drug use as it is about whether he filled in the form or not. And so we can expect a lot of evidence in the form of text messages, photos, and testimony from ex-partners about his drug use, which one could argue has a political undertone.
Hello, I'm James and I produced the video you're watching. If you're enjoying what you're watching, we'd love it if you considered subscribing and checking us out on our other platforms. It'd really help in getting the word out about what we're doing here at TDA. Thanks very much, and now back to the deep dive.
Now, there is a chance that Hunter Biden himself may testify, but we're not 100% sure on that.
What can you tell me about the early stages of the trial?
So a 12-member jury was selected on Monday, and that's when Hunter's trial got underway in a court in Delaware. We had some big names in attendance. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, who is his stepmother, she was there at the first day of hearings, and we're expecting several witnesses to appear at the trial over the coming weeks, including some of the Biden family. But this also could include some being called by the prosecution, which include 3 former partners who are expected to testify about Hunter's drug use around the time that he bought the gun.
And have we heard from President Biden on this?
We do have a statement from the president, and it was actually quite a rare statement on his family. He said, quote, "I'm the president, but I'm also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today. Hunter's resilience in the face of adversity and the strength he has brought to his recovery are inspiring to us." And he kept going. He said, "As the president, I don't and won't comment on pending federal cases, but as a dad, I have boundless love for my son, confidence in him, and respect for his strength."
So really separating his roles there from what he can say as president and what he can say as the father of Hunter Biden. But clearly he's sticking by his son.
Yeah.
So now give me a sense of how the American public and the media have reacted to this trial.
Well, I know this might surprise you, but there's been vastly different reactions to the same situation, almost like there's kind of 2 truths out there in the US. So, it's kind of based on which side of politics your news is coming from. So some media outlets and critics of the Biden administration have heavily criticized Hunter's actions, often using them as a point of attack against President Biden as a father, as he frames himself in that statement. They're also zoning in on this comparison between Hunter Biden's trial and the trial of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, of course, was found guilty last week of falsifying business records. I'll throw a link to an episode we did on that in today's show notes. But have a listen to how Fox News host Sean Hannity introduced the story in last night's Fox News Bulletin.
And meanwhile, we are monitoring yet another legal case, this one out of Delaware. Joe Biden loves to say nobody's above the law, but he might be soon singing a very different tune now that his very own son is facing the possibility of real prison time.
And then, of course, you have the other side, supporters of the Biden family and of Joe Biden's campaign. And they've framed this as a personal issue, and it shouldn't be a political trial, especially when you consider Hunter's struggles with addiction. Have a listen to how it was covered, the same story, on MSNBC.
This has really taken an emotional toll on the First family, Anna, and that has been the case for as long as Hunter Biden has been in the throes of addiction and now on his path to recovery and now confronting all of these multiple legal challenges. And this is something that the president, as he wrote in this statement this morning, he is approaching it as a father, as a concerned parent, not as the current president of the United States in the midst of a superheated re-election battle.
Some really interesting insights there into the bias of different media outlets and why we should all be, critical of how and where we're getting our media from.
Definitely.
Now, we've mentioned briefly that this is all happening in the really important context of a US presidential election, which is happening in November.
Yep.
Will this affect Joe Biden's campaign?
Interestingly, the polling says that neither the Hunter Biden trial that's currently happening or the Donald Trump trial is actually going to play a major role in the way that Americans view these 2 candidates.
Thank you so much for explaining, and we will be back tomorrow.